Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Marilyn Sturner was a giving woman who, throughout her life, made every effort to make others, those around her, happy. Her sons, her students, and through her writing, the world. Now, I didn't know Marilyn in life, but I spent a little bit of time with Ray and with Lenny and with Ben, who shared with me through their emotions at Marilyn's sudden passing some of who she was and what drove her during her years on Earth. In the process, I learned a number of things about her that jumped out at me. I learned that she was a talented poet and writer, putting her depth and thoughtfulness to paper to share with the world. I learned that she loved the piano, libraries, art, her children and her grandchildren. She was a teacher who went into battle. She taught 7th grade English. This is not a task for the faint of heart. And, according to Lenny, he said that she had a docile, sweet, and warm demeanor to her. And these are the traits that we raise up today the very best of who Marilyn was. So, more formally, we are brought together today in loving memory of Marilyn Sturner, Milka Bat Shulik, Zichronah Livracha, of blessed memory. You know, our Jewish tradition teaches that while the physical body is temporary, the soul is without end. It's eternal. So today, we gather for sacred purpose. We pray for the full and complete rest for Marilyn's body. And as she's later laid to rest graveside in Jenkintown, we'll note that her soul is bound to the bond of life. Each and every one of you. And we pray for her soul to be continuously elevated. May our time together today have purpose and deep meaning. And may it honor well Marilyn's memory, who passed away suddenly just a few short days ago. I'm Rabbi Nathan Weiner. I'm a rabbi locally here in South Jersey at Congregation Beth Tikva in Marlton, and on behalf of me, my family, my congregation, it's an honor and a privilege to be present here with all of you today. So Marilyn, as I mentioned, is survived by her two loving sons, her son Lenny and her son Benjamin and his wife Kimberly, his grandchildren, to whom I heard she loved sending gifts, to William and Cameron, to her former husband Ray and Ray's wife Barbara, to her brothers Mark and his wife Barbara, and Gary and his wife Elaine, as well as a number of loving nieces, nephews, and extended family. I hope I got every name right.
Mark's wife Paula.
Mark's wife Paula. Thank you. That's why I said that. Thank you. May your love for one another carry you through this difficult transition. So we have a couple of goals ahead of us today. Goal one is to perform the mitzvah of kavod hamet, of honoring the deceased. And for most of our time together today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep our kavanah, our intention, on Marilyn's memory. That's our first mitzvah. And then at graveside, we're going to complete that mitzvah as she's interred, and then transition to becoming a community of consolation for these mourners, doing the mitzvah of nichum avelim, of comforting the mourners. We take a moment for comfort now with Psalm 23, a psalm universal across the Abrahamic faith traditions at times of grief when we seek comfort. Mizmor David, Adonai ro'i lo achsar, a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. I mentioned before that I didn't know Marilyn in life, but it's important that we hear from some of those who did, who knew her, who loved her, and who are grieving her. And you're going to hear from 4 members of the family today. You're first going to hear from Ben, then from Gary, and then Lenny and Ray. I invite you each up to share a eulogy, or as we say in Hebrew, a hesped, to honor her kavod, to raise up her honor and dignity. Ben?
Thank you, Rabbi, for the really wonderful words. And thank you all for showing up today. It means a lot to me personally, my family, and just being here. And your presence means a lot. So thank you so much for being here. My mom was amazing, and she's just it's hard to put in words about my mom, but I'll do my best to do that. But before we do that, I wanted to honor, like you said, she was very big into honoring her family and her parents too. And her grandmother, my grandmother, B. Knapp and Sydney Knapp, who are not here today. I just wanted to take a quick moment to remember them for a second. And with that, my grandfather, Sidney, he was in the World War II. And my mom was born in November 4th, 1943, in the middle of the war. And my grandfather was away, and he was fighting for his country. And just this weekend, when we were going through my mom's stuff, I found a poem my grandfather wrote. And it was amazing. I just happened to run into it, and I said, whoa, look at this date. And it was published. And he wrote this poem about my mom, Marilyn, not knowing if he would see her because he was very sick in the hospital. And he didn't know if he would make it from the war. And I'm going to read this to you. And I was hoping everybody got a slideshow presentation which kind of shows you this. And it's on page 3. If you don't have it, you can share with a friend, or you have something in the back, you need to. And it says, the title of the poem is called Baby Girl. And this was a couple months after this report. And it says, a little girl was born today. Born in a world of storm and strife, her soldier dad was far away, learning a new strange of life, learning to kill, to wound, to mound, to knife in the dark, to creep and crawl, through mud and slime. The big one, the one big aim was now to conquer once for all. When all this is over, the lust for power forever destroyed, the enemy vanquished and ground into dust, then will come our great day of rejoicing. Evil is vanished. A little girl is born today, and though her dad is far away, she'll grow up fine and strong and gay to greet her dad's glorious day. By Sydney Knapp. And this poem that my grandfather wrote, he didn't know if he would see my mom, and he did. And my grandfather was a big influence on my mom, through her study, through literature and poetry and writing and everything else. And for me, my mom was my light. She lit up the room. When you would see her, you knew that it was a smile that was as big as it could be. She loved to smile. And I think it's a great memory for everybody here to smile and thinking about my mom and how wonderful she was. She did that often. She was quite beautiful. You can see some of these pictures, but the beauty on the outside, didn't compare at all to the beauty on the inside in her heart. She here gave everyone a compliment. Probably in this room, everybody has heard something from my mom. She liked to say, "That's beautiful." And it's like kind of how Gary says it too. He says, "We're beautiful." It's the same way my mom says it. And she said that often because she wanted to make people feel better. And that was her goal every day, was to make people feel better. She taught me some very important lessons, but the most important lesson is just to be kind. And kindness was something my mom had that radiated her. And it was something that she gave everyone, that kindness. And she exemplified kindness. And there's so much to learn from her. And I'm still learning from her and what's left for this legacy of kindness. And I'm hoping everybody here can, take that, one act of kindness and pass it on. And that's something I'm hoping people can do. She loved to learn, as we talked about, installed from her grandfather and from my grandmother. And books were a very big passion of hers. She read books so much. We went to her apartment and had to clean out so many books. And we went down, I took some of the books downstairs, and this one lady said, "Oh, I'm a big grammar and literature person. This book is amazing." She had amazing books, and she would send me books every week. And she taught for 20 years as an English teacher, taught literature, drama in Haddonfield and also in North Carolina. She would teach people. Not only would she teach, she would direct plays, and she directed many Shakespearean plays. She loved, Romeo and Juliet, and many of the great works in art. She was a real Renaissance woman, and she sent many books to me. My sons Cameron still have books. William has these books. Every week she would send books, and she would have her name in the front of the book inscribed and the date. She kind of knew that she wanted to pass this on, and that's something that's important, was to pass on literature and learning. One of the many books she sent, one was called The Wonder. I don't know if anybody's seen that movie here, but The Wonder is about a boy who had a disability. And people maybe, at first, they would say, oh, he's got one eye, and you need to, there's something wrong with him. And my mom hated it when people thought there was something wrong with her or something wrong with anybody. She just hated ill treatment. And my mom loved this book, and she, thought it was very inclusive for others and wanted people to feel included. And at the end of this book, people loved this boy. And she talked many times when she was younger about, never having any ill will for anybody to, create something that's making fun of people. And she wanted to make sure people were inclusive to people. And that was an important lesson my mom would give, inclusivity. And giving back, too, is teaching that she did. She taught me really the art of giving back. She was a true giver. When she had, Chris Farrell, who's here, she talked about when my mom, when someone would have $1, she would give the last bit of that money to her kids, to other people. She didn't care about putting money in the bank. She wanted to give money back. She wanted to give items back. She was a real true giver. And giving was her greatest joy, and her joy was to uplift people, make them feel special. And making people feel special, she probably did to everyone in this room and everyone she met. My mom was able to really have that smile and find something special about that person. My mom would call me every day to lift me up. Every single day, I would get a call, a voicemail, and no matter if I was in meetings with anybody, I would pick up the phone with my mom, and my ass out, I'd call her back, but I would pick it up. And she could tell in my voice if something was the matter with me, or just a slightest bit off, not having a good day. She could just tell. And she knew, Ben, what's the matter? You're not, she's a warrior. A Jewish mother like her, but she had that from my grandmother too. And she worried a lot about others, but she worried a lot about her sons in particular. When it was my birthday, or Valentine's Day, or Father's Day, this was a huge holiday for my mom because she was so excited to give us presents and give us something to remind us how much she loved us. She wanted to share those simple joys and acts of kindness. And when it was any kind of holiday, she would, Halloween and Valentine's Day to the kids, she would send presents after presents after presents because she just wanted to give them that joy. And the happiness she got most was from her family. She loved my father, Ray, from the very end. Even though they parted ways, their friendships in marriage, their friendship, though, in life and support for one another lasted till the end. And my dad was there for my mom at the very end. He was always supporting my mom, and I love my dad just as much, and he really has done everything for her. Amazing, they loved each other. She loved her brothers very much from the beginning of life. She had one brother who was 6 years younger and spent a lot of time with him, and he'll talk a little bit about it. The other brother, Mark, was 12 years younger, and so he was somebody who she could really spend time with as, help him grow and watch him and develop. And they, to this day, were very close every single day, talking. And the family was very close. As Elaine says, Gary's wife, family is everything. And she talks about that a lot. And that's something that was really important to my mom, was family. The one thing in the last 7 years that brought her more joy than anything else was her grandkids. William and Cameron. She was a very proud grandma, very proud. It brought her so much joy to be with them. She loved everything about them. She would share pictures and stories about her grandchildren. It's the first thing she would say, or highlight of the day, was getting the pictures from the school. We would have pictures every day coming from school, and I would send it to her, no matter what. And the school would send us a few pictures every day, and she would comment, oh, I love this one, I love that. Great job, Cameron, great job, William. She was the proudest grandmom you could ever imagine. What a grandma my mom was. And she left these books, as I was talking about, inscribed. And one of the books was called The Little Engine That Could. I don't know if you guys have ever read The Little Engine That Could, but just last week, Cameron said to me, he said, "Dad, I just hit this baseball. And you know what? I told myself, I think I can. And that was something that I think my mom would have really loved. And she read that to me, and she gave that as one of their first books. And to make people feel good is, developing that confidence that I think I can. And that was very nice that my son did that. My mom was an amazing pianist. She had a piano with Grandpa Sid at their home, and he would play every Steinway. And one of the things that I was able to do was buy her a Steinway piano, and she loved it. She was so happy about this gift, and she wanted to give it to me. She was so selfless. After the last couple of years, she gave it to me, and I have it for my kids, and hopefully one day maybe they'll play. She also was an amazing poet. Her writings and paintings are something that I have here, and wanted to share that with you. Her poetry won first prize in the poetry contest. Her paintings, she painted for friends, she painted for relatives, she painted, sketches for anybody who really wanted that, and she wanted to give those paintings to people. And so many people said to me, "Your mom's paintings are so bold and amazing," and I didn't realize the depth of her paintings. I'm not an artist myself. Maybe I skipped a generation. Well, my sons are, and they're going to have a lot of her paintings and the watercolors she made. She was really, as I said before, a true Renaissance woman because she did so many different things in the arts. She loved the arts. My mom was very grateful about the simple things in life. She lived in a one-bedroom apartment for the last years of her life. Small one-bedroom, and she was there the whole time, and COVID didn't go out for over a year, not once, because she just didn't want to get sick. And she made that through. And the way that she was able to really make it through was her gratitude. She had so much gratitude, and that's what really tempered her happiness. Her happiness came from her gratitude, and she was so grateful for the little things. A phone call, a sandwich, anything that you would have that would be little. She had so much gratitude, and that in turn made her one of the happiest women. I mean, my mom was so happy. And other people might have a lot and may not be as happy as my mom was. She was so happy, and that came from her gratitude. So in her memory, I'm hoping everybody here will read an extra book. Maybe you'll get the Little Engine for your next kid. When you hear a piano playing, please think of Marilyn. Write a poem, paint some rainbows and watercolors. She'll love that. Think of Marilyn. And above all, please, do something kind. Do something kind for someone who may not feel included but needs your help. Make a compliment and find the best in people. That's the essence of my mom, is kindness. My bright light, my number one fan. I will miss her dearly. I love you, Mom, and hope your memory and spirit will last forever.
Good morning, family members, friends, relatives, people who just had a short acquaintance with my sister. I'm so grateful you're here. In listening to the Rabbi and Ben, when they took everything I wanted to say, but you always say it twice, and especially you want to hear it twice for my sister, because everything Ben said is absolutely true. We come from a family, and Ben mentioned this, that she was born in 43, I was born in 47, but Mark wasn't born until 55. So during our younger years, I was too young to hang out with my older sister, and naturally, same thing for my brother. But as the years moved on, we got a lot closer than we did the first couple of years. And a couple things, my sister was never really athletic, but I taught her in the cold winters, it seemed like winters were a lot colder back when we were kids. I taught her how to belly flop on a flexible flyer sled. And next night, I wanted to go out. She had already taken the sled to meet her friends, and it was going to be the first time she was going down the hill. So she always said to me, "Thank you for teaching me how to do a belly flop on the flexible flyer." You know, she loved both her parents, but she gravitated to my father and cherished the ground that he walked on. And my father sort of instilled in her, you always take care of your family. And you can see from the stories from Ben that she was always helpful. I'm a teenager in high school. I finally get my first date to my wife. I didn't have a car. She just started teaching, and she got a brand new 65 Corvair. And I would ask her for a Saturday night or a Friday night, "Marilyn, can I borrow your car?" Never once hesitated, always willing. And she knew that when the car came back, there'd be a full tank of gas, and the next day I'd wash the car for her. So she was appreciative, but I was really appreciative because I was able to take my wife out, who I was dating at the time. Getting back to cherishing my father, I'll remember, and I was really little, they would go to the they did go to the Haddonfield Public Library, but they started out the Philadelphia Free Library. And I was 5, and it would be a Friday night, the library was open, and they would go and get books, both of them. And actually, I wasn't going to read a book, but she always loved to read. And when we finally moved to Haddonfield in '54, my parents found out where there was dance lessons. She wanted to take dance lessons. Then there was an art studio, and I can't remember the street in Haddonfield. It might still be there, but she had to take art lessons. And the piano, I lasted a week. She lasted her life knowing how to play the piano and doing it well. And as far as the English literature, I remember we were talking. I just started teaching in 1970, and by that time she had like 5 years of teaching in, and she was teaching at Gloucester Middle School, 7th grade, and I was teaching 7th grade woodworking. So we were able to talk a lot about what were the students like and how they appreciated. She always said they loved her in Gloucester Middle School for what she did, what she instilled in the students, what they learned from her. So that was important. I'm just trying to, finally, I'm going to say, loving her parents so much. Now she's at peace, and my father and her are probably talking like crazy about what's going on, and I'm just so happy that she's in a lot better place from where she was just recently. And one last thing, 5.5 weeks ago, my wife and I went to visit her in her apartment. We were there for about 2.5 hours, and we were talking like crazy. And what I liked about my sister always said, "Gary, what did Daddy do? What did Mommy do?" She knew I had a memory for dates, things that happened, stuff like that. And she'd always bring those two people, our parents, into the conversation, which I love. So, Marilyn, I love you. Always love you. And I really cherish that 2.5 hour meeting we had 5.5 weeks ago. Or it was over 2 hours, I know that. But I love you, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for being here, both in person and in stream, from North Carolina to New York to Maryland. We really appreciate it, and so does Mom. My mom touched many lives, so many. And I'm sure those who are fortunate enough to have been with her can attest to this. She lived a life marked by dedication to her family, her students, and colleagues during her career as a teacher and caregiver, and to a deeply rooted personal passion for art and literature. Marilyn was born in Philadelphia during World War II. Her father was fighting in Germany at the time and could not wait to get back to her. She was his Mersey. At 13, her family moved across the bridge to Haddonfield, and she later went on to the University of Arizona, where the sun and her proximity to a pool transformed her into an avid swimmer. My mom would swim for days. Anybody who saw her at the Y or Duke Faculty Club can attest she swam like a fish. Did laps for hours on end, up until her 70s. On returning to Philadelphia, she would go on to meet the love of her life, my dad, Raymond Sturner, with whom she moved to New Haven and ultimately to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where Ben and I were born. Growing up, she first developed a passion for playing the piano and fell in love with reading classic literature, a joy which was instilled in her by her father, Sidney, as my Uncle Gary so eloquently put, and my brother. My mother was a great pianist and played piano well into her 70s thanks to the Steinway piano my brother gave her. She loved Billy Joel and the Beatles. She was fortunate enough to go see him recently in New York City. While that was a skill endowed by her father, her mother, Bee, also fostered her creative passions into expertise and having her cultivate her skills as an artist and a writer, and her passion for literature led her to become an English teacher for so many years. Later, the most attentive nanny you can imagine. My mom was a caregiver to us like no other. In addition to the arts, her other talent was mentoring young children, like she did with Ben and me, and all those with whom she was a teacher or a nanny to. Remarkably, the kids she nannied stayed in constant contact with her for many years. Combining her talents, she drew the kids' art pictures, took care of them, and made watercolor paintings that they still keep. She was an underdog. As a kid, she contracted rheumatic fever, which led to lifelong heart complications, but that didn't stop her. Despite her own personal struggles, she developed much empathy for those struggling during the civil rights movement, anybody who had a disability. My mom was there for them. The girl, anybody who was an underdog, my mom had the utmost empathy. That girl reconnected with her recently, who she took care of, who had Down syndrome, and my mom never forgot her. While in North Carolina, the library and community pool and the YMCA were her favorite places to take Ben and I. Through our many outings, she made sure to emphasize the importance of literature and made sure we knew how to swim at a young age. Growing up, I recall my mom spending countless days shopping for us in the malls to make sure we had all our hearts desired, from tennis lessons to tapes and CDs to the newest jerseys to video games the day they came out. She was there for us, and she got anything we wanted with the little bit that she had at times. There was no place that brought her more joy than taking us to the mall. She would get so worried if we were lost, she would call security right away. Or if we didn't come home right away from school, the police were there. The mall was her comfort zone, and magazines were her way of showing us and magazine stores and video stores were her way of showing us immense amount of life and culture and arts and films and museums. She loved going up to New York to the Met and the MoMA and seeing all the artwork, followed by seeing a big movie of the week. I enjoyed spending each summer with my mom in Chapel Hill after I moved to Maryland, well into my 20s. And Ben would join us whenever he could. I'd be working in Chapel Hill. She would take us everywhere. We would go out to eat, to a movie, to the mall, to the gym, all in one day. We would choose a different restaurant each night. We would go to at least 2 films, and she would love picking out clothes for me, so I would look like a mensch. She did not like it when I wore jerseys and picture shirts. After 35 years of forming countless amazing friendships in Chapel Hill and taking many continuing education courses at UNC, Mom moved back to South Jersey to be closer to her 2 brothers and sister-in-laws, and to Ben and myself, who were in New York City. And we were so fortunate. There was a bus that went door to door that allowed us to visit Mom many, many times. In between jobs, in between projects, I pretty much lived with her. She would not rest until I was home in bed, calling me on the bus when I left, making sure I got home. Where are you? What's the matter? A day out in New York City when she would come up brought her so much joy. And Ben loved taking her to concerts and shows. And while I had to explore all the best scenery, and she loved exploring all the best scenery and food that New York had to offer. And I'm happy to say that I had the opportunity to see Mom so frequently in the last 11 years. It was such a blessing. I would come down, like I said, by bus. She would meet me by the Cherry Hill Mall, honking her horn, smiling at me. The adrenaline rush was just amazing. She would pick me up, we'd go to our next adventure, to the mall, to the Barnes & Nobles, read for hours, then to a movie, then out to eat for a big, awesome meal. My mom's caring and protective nature showed through the end. Whenever I would leave her place, she insisted on staying on the phone until I arrived home safely. She worried about Ben and I till the last day. Voicemails I'll cherish forever. Even as recently as 4 months ago, while her health was declining, and we were a little bit naive because she was so happy while sitting down, she just couldn't move and stand up after everything with her heart and her lungs. She was worried about me in the emergency room with my Uncle Mark, on the phone with him when I had a stomach flare-up. She didn't care about her own health. She just cared about me. And we all experienced this with my mom at some point. My mom would open her arms to anybody that needed her. While she loved spending time with Ben and myself, she had a wide range of friends. My mom kept in contact with her friends from North Carolina, from Philadelphia, Arizona, you name it. She loved reconnecting when her health started to decline on the internet through the virtual world. She was the most loyal person anyone could ask about. She would always ask about others before talking about herself. And that's something that I would like to work on. And if she was in a room full of Republicans, she was a conservative. If she was in a room full of Democrats, she was as liberal as can be. Why? Because my mother wanted to be accepted and liked by everyone, regardless of political beliefs, religion, race. Her love for her friends remained constant. Later in life, when she had trouble breathing and walking, she still loved to reconnect, like I said, online, through her paintings, through her art, and through her phone calls. We love to miss her so much. I'm glad that Ben and I were both able to bring her so much joy by ordering her meals through the pandemic every day. She would say how amazingly fresh it was and how much she loved it and how much she loved us after each one. As anyone knows my mom, a quality meal would always make her happy. Thank you for being here to celebrate the life of an angel. Order a good chocolate dessert, milkshake, eat some fudge, and a hearty meal today in honor of her. And enjoy a day at the pool, and most importantly, read a book and do a kind deed. From Philly to South Jersey through NYC and North Carolina, thank you all for being here. She touched so many lives.
Thank you again for being here to support Marilyn. I'm Marilyn's ex-husband, but I never became her ex-friend. We weren't always married, but we were always friends. In fact, I can't recall any angry arguments that we were cut into. Ben and Lenny, Gary, reviewed her kind and caring spirit. When I first met Marilyn, she was a rather newly minted junior high English teacher. And I was impressed, and you heard about it, with how compassionate she was, especially for the children who were socially challenged. And I could see also she told me that being nice, being herself nice to these kids, wasn't always the best strategy in 7th grade. And the rabbi said that it was going to war, and I can imagine talking to Gary about the war stories with the 7th grade students. So she had to pretend to be mean. She had to pretend to be mean. And she would know when she could let go and be herself. Some people pretend to be friendly.
she was always genuinely friendly. And she would reveal her caring, sweet self to her friends, to everyone, and especially her boys who were in the receiving end. And with time, she came to realize that if she took care of little kids and disabled individuals, she didn't have to pretend to be mean. She could be herself. She could be this caring, giving person that you've heard so much about. She didn't wait for social media to be connected to friends. She was always there and in touch with her friends. And so we were cleaning out her apartment a few days ago, and you could see these actual letters from friends all over. Then I ran into a note from someone we respected a lot, Diane Drakeford, someone who was my secretary in the early 80s. And here was a note, and there were pictures, a whole album of her grandchildren. I was looking at that and I was thinking, oh my God. I wasn't in touch with Diane. And she was all those years. So I still have a lot to learn from Marilyn. When Marilyn was dying in the hospital recently, Ben reached out to his friend, Rabbi Ezra Cohen. And Rabbi, among other things, said, as we heard today, that her spirit will live on. And what I get about that, what my understanding is, I can see in Lenny, who is legendary in being in touch with his friends. And his friend David from elementary school, who I think is here today, his testimony to that part of Lenny. And Ben is also someone who can make meaningful, lasting relationships. And so a few days ago, Ben happened to call Diane Drakeford, who I said I hadn't been in contact. So he knew to do that. The boys didn't get that from me. They got it from Marilyn. And you heard about Marilyn's love for literature and books and reading. Well, Ben reads to Cameron and William every night, you know that. But most importantly, Ben had the good sense to find another caring teacher who you can see interacting with her boys, the kindness she has, and with so much left over for a whole group of little animals that she takes care of. That's Kimberly. So I'm confident that the spirit, nefesh, is going to continue. And we're grateful that we were touched by it. And we've heard from everyone how to bring it forward and keep her spirit alive.
It's with memories and thoughts and loving dedications in mind that we move to the central prayer of a Jewish memorial service, El Maleh Rachamim, which asks that her soul be granted true rest on the wings of God's divine presence. If it's comfortable physically for you to do so, please rise. God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant true rest upon the wings of the Shekhinah, the divine presence, in the exalted spheres of the holy and pure. who shine as resplendence of the firmament to the soul of Marilyn Sturner, who has gone to her supernal world. For charity has been donated in remembrance of her soul. May her place of rest be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore, may the All-Merciful One shelter her with the cover of God's wings forever and bind her soul in the bond of life. Adonai is her heritage. May she rest in her resting place in peace. And let us say, Amen. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hametzeh Menucha Nechona, Al Kanfei HaShechina, B'malot Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Milka Bat Shulik, Shehalcha Le'olama, Ba'avor Shenatvu Tzedaka Ba'ad Hazkarat Nishmata, V'gan Eden Tehe Menuchata, Lachen Bal HaRachamim Yaskireha V'Seter Kenafav Le'olamim, B'Yitzror HaChaim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'Tanuach Al Mishkava B'Shalom, V'Nomar Amen. Please be seated. Our formal time together here is drawing to a close. In lieu of flowers, the family asked that donations be made to the Bookmates program through the Jewish Federation of Southern New Jersey. It's an amazing program to donate to Bookmates. Meals and visits of consolation will be had today following interment at Tiffany's on the Boulevard.
Will the pallbearers please step to the center aisle? And I'll ask if we can rise once more, please.
Yoshev Tzitzer Al Yon, Tzil Shaddai Yonai. Amar L'Adonai Ma'asim Mitzvotati L'Ohai Atafo. Hu Yitzilch Mipata Kush Midever Chavo. Erbato Yesechlach V'Tachat Kenavat Tamseh Tzimah V'Tzocher Amito. Lo Tivra Mipachad Laila. V'Chetzi U'Kiyomam. V'Gever Ba'ochel Ya'alot V'Ketev Yeshut Tzororayim. Ho Mitzilcha Elef U'Rabam Minacha Elecha Lo Yigash. Rak V'Yinecha Tabit V'Shlomat V'Sha'im Tir'eh. כי יצרנה מציא עליון שמתי מעונחה, לא תיונה לך רעה, ונגע לא יקרב או הלך.
You may be seated. If you can kindly remain seated, please, just for a moment. Folks in this room, ready to go to our cars, we can head out this room. Folks in this room. Folks in this room. Folks who are in this room.